So good morning, everyone. Being from the San Francisco Bay Area, there's a lot of analogies around baseball right now. And I get to be the leadoff hitter for what should be a great day. But I can also see that I'm competing with the great after effects of several good networking dinners last night, which is fine. But I've got a treat in store for you guys today. That is to give you some different perspectives, some insights about how we're thinking about the evolution of the network and what these mega trends that are happening in the world today around mobility, cloud computing, and the exponential opportunity that it is creating for our industry. And what it means in terms of 4G LTE generation of networks and how we collectively can take advantage of that. But as Burge pointed out, Juniper is known for the big honking routers. I'm not going to talk about big honking routers today. Yes, there may be an image or two in one of my slides around a router, but it's in the context for how we want to expand and take advantage of opportunities in a changing world, in which software, in which intelligence, in which new business models are going to define how we think and how we take advantage of growth opportunities going forward. So to start with is, the top part of the title of this slide is drivers of ROI for the next decade. And we have the obligatory big numbers that come up with this type of slide. Numbers we've all seen in one shape or form or another. 5 billion mobile devices growing to 50 billion within the next 5 to 8 years. Hundreds of billions of dollars being spent by enterprises moving to a cloud transition. But a lot of the times the conversation centers around just looking at potential revenue opportunities rather than also looking at the I in the ROI. Where are the investments needed? Where will the investments need to take place? And what type of investments will need to take place to be able to capitalize or take advantage of that R or that revenue growth in a profitable and in a compelling way as 4G operators model their networks. And so the next 25 minutes or so, we're going to talk just about that, both the investment side and then how that leads to the revenue side. And we're going to talk about it in the terms of three imperatives for the operators of the next decade. And these three imperatives, the first two build on the third. First is around defending the networks, security. Interesting to even have this conversation as part of this type of forum or this type of industry conversation. But as I will point out to you in the next couple of slides, defending the network and having a secure network is a fundamental basis for taking advantage of any opportunity going forward. Next is around TCO. TCO is a buzzword that's been around for 30 plus years. I can remember TCO calculators back from my early days at Lucent in the 1990s, and it's something that carries with us through this industry. But what does that really mean? What does that really mean in terms of the next generation? And what does that mean in terms of investment priorities for how we take advantage of new business models going forward? And then finally, the most interesting piece from my perspective is how do you create a platform for growth? Not a network for growth, but a platform for growth. And I'm going to describe what the difference between those two things are. Because a platform is something that enables an ecosystem of growth and revenue opportunities on top of the network versus just building out capacity in the network to push packets or push expanding growth that hits that network in a overwhelming way. So first, let's talk a little bit about security, that first imperative. And I'm going to bring up a slide here around security breaches. Now, all of these names hit the headlines in the news within the last 2 years or so. And they all hit the headlines in the news around a similar type of issue that faced their business models, in the sense that they were hacked. They were hacked and their customer data was taken from them. Now, it's not to say that these particular customers or these particular companies had insufficient security or weren't following best practices across the industry. What it points out, though, is that there is big business, huge business in the black market of taking and stealing subscriber information, customer information from customers of all types. So what, you ask? These aren't mobile carriers. This isn't a business model for the next generation of mobile carriers. This is not an issue that you have to face. Well, the reality is yes, it is. The fundamental design of LTE networks is based on IP. That means every resource on your network is now going to have an IP address. That means the fundamental core of the 4G business model, your subscribers and who they are, now have the potential of being impacted. They're open to the internet. They're open to that IP-based network. And building security architectures into your network becomes a foundational premise for being able to take advantage of any opportunity. And so making sure that you have a good set of investment priorities around the security architecture is incredibly important. And in this slide, we show a couple of different firewalls that sit between the internet or between the user. And certainly firewalls are an important part of security. And having extremely high performance firewalls that can handle the traffic of network operators becomes an absolute imperative if you do not want to have the firewall turn into a choke point on your network, which they will in these next generation of networks. But more importantly is you need a comprehensive, connected approach to your security. A connected approach that starts with the end device and works all the way back through the mobile core edge and all the way back into the data center and the virtual resources that exist within those data centers in a connected way. You also need a security system that is accurate, that is definitive. The security model of today is around reputations. It is around signatures. It is around attacks that have already happened, and it is around blocking large IP address ranges based on denial of service attacks or hacker origination. That was an okay model for an enterprise paradigm. But for a service provider, that doesn't work. You can't go out there and block large ranges of IP addresses. You've got to know where that hacker is coming from. And the next generation of effective security is not only going to be comprehensive, it's going to be definitive with technologies much like what Juniper just bought recently, Mykonos technology, that can definitively ID a hacker before that hacker attacks your network and go out and push that information to all endpoints across the network to prevent an attack from happening. That will define what the next generation of security is, performance and definitive definition of where a hack is going to happen. And this type of investment paradigm and thinking needs to go into any kind of business strategy development as you look forward to take advantage of the next generation of opportunities. So what's the next level of investment, the next imperative? Well, that gets around TCO savings. And let's put it in the context of what's happening on the internet today. So here's some other big stats of what's going on in the industry. 600 million mobile visitors a day to YouTube. Interestingly enough, that is a 3x increase in terms of mobile visitor traffic to YouTube in just 1 year. That shows the expansive implications in terms of mobile video. 50% of the traffic that is carried over the mobile network to mobile users today is comprised of video traffic. That's expected to grow to 70% within the next couple of years. And then you see the rise of these new business models. These new business models all based around video and video traffic, where business definition is defined and business success is defined not in years to grow to a large subscriber base, but literally defined in months. When you look at new services such as Tango, SocialCam that appeared within the last 2 years, or in the case of Tango, in the last several months, and how rapidly they have grown their subscriber base, all based on video traffic, is you realize just what an impact it's having across all the networks. Now, those types of stats may not be surprising in and of itself, but when you think of YouTube alone, 600 million mobile users visiting this thing a day, visiting this service a day. But that's only 10% of YouTube's total traffic. You can think about the expansion, the explosion, the capacity that a well-run network is going to need to be able to handle. But also think about it in terms of what's happening around that video content to really understand how to optimize the investments against this mobile wave of video traffic that's coming is you got to understand how this content works. So I guarantee you, this is probably the only keynote where I'm actually going to have, where there's actually going to be a picture of Psy, the latest pop sensation, pop culture sensation that has hit the network over the last couple of months. Now, Psy, if you haven't seen his video, then you're one of the few people on the planet right now that hasn't seen his video, is Gangnam Style and the wave of culture that has hit. His video has been seen by over 400 million times in the last 2.5 months. Now, what's surprising about that? Not that there is this popular sensation of a video, but just how rapidly that grew. Now, on average, that video has been seen by 4 to 5 different times on one viewing by a viewer or by an area. And so it's not just the fact that you are seeing the explosive growth of this video, is you're seeing that same video repeated over and over again. And so intelligently managing this traffic, it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to have all this video traffic, or we're going to have to deal with these popular waves of information coming through on the network. But it's another thing to say, hey, do I have to pull that video from the data center each and every time and run that full stream of traffic across my entire network? That's highly inefficient. How do I intelligently manage it at the edge? How do I cache that video? How do I optimize the video and the compression technology to adapt it for different screens? So whether it's working for a mobile user, on a small device, on a larger screen such as a tablet device, or even if I'm cross-carrying over into my fixed line network, how do I manage that consistently across in a universal type of way? Having a strategy around having a universal edge, of having this cache management technology, of optimizing how you plan that traffic through your network is an imperative in terms of enabling your ability to take advantage of the next generation of technology and the next wave of revenue opportunities that are going to hit your network. So that's a little bit of an introduction to some of the investment imperatives and the big building blocks of thinking that are going to have to hit your network. Those aren't all of them, but these are the big trends in terms of setting up for the strategy of now getting to the crux of it, which is with mobile and cloud coming together, where are the big revenue opportunities? And that's changing the paradigm of thinking from a network and running a network to a platform and running a platform. So what do I mean by running a platform? Well, let's put it in the context of where is the revenue coming today versus where is the revenue coming tomorrow. We have a number of subscribers. And in our mature markets, that subscriber number is relatively flat in terms of growth rate, single-digit growth rates. In emerging markets, it's still a significant driver of growth against the network. But suffice it to say is that subscribers alone are not going to be the paradigm for driving future revenue growth. The other thing about subscribers is there's the fixed share of wallet and the fixed share of time. Subscribers only make so much income. They only have so many hours in the day to actually consume the services and the applications running across the network. That means that there needs to be other profit pools, other models to borrow from, other ways to create value creation in your network to pull from those profit pools to enable a next generation of revenue opportunities for the networks. That's the key. And as we think about moving this thing forward and moving the opportunity, the profit opportunities forward, is looking at where those profit pools are going to come from and how to take advantage of it. And that's where it gets to the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is much more than just machine to machine. It's much more than just a car talking to the network or a smart gas meter talking to the network. It is moving from a subscriber-based mentality to a subscription-based mentality around revenue model building. Is an individual subscriber, whether it be a person or an entity, can have multiple subscriptions running against your network at any particular time. A subscriber of the future can have a driverless automobile that they are driving down the freeway at 60 miles an hour being run by the network. And at the same time doing a high-definition video conference on their screen in that car. At the same time consuming data in terms of the information that they need across the network. And if you think that's a futuristic story, both Nevada and California now have laws on the books that allow for driverless cars to run across their highways. Now, that is the Internet of Things. And when you think about the profit pools that this Internet of Things can start to borrow from and a platform for revenue growth is, how much would an insurance company be saving in terms of knowing that the crash rate or the fatality rate of automobile accidents is going to go down significantly because of the intelligence of the managed network. How much would hospitals be willing to pay to take their most important non-scalable asset, their doctors, their premier specialists, and be able to take their knowledge and expand it across a network of locations across the country or across the world in a way that only a high-definition video conferencing and data can provide across an intelligent network? These are the opportunities. These are the profit pools. These are the players that are going to be willing to pay for these subscriptions across your network. Subscriptions to these new services. Subscriptions that will require levels of service, levels of capability within the network around quality of service and delivery and prioritization of service that we have not even imagined in our networks. Now, I would tell you is back in the 1990s when we were still doing the 5 ESS switches and frame relay and ATM, it was inconceivable, to quote from one of my favorite movies, inconceivable to think that we would be seeing the demands on the network that we are today. But what we are seeing around the demands in the network and the new revenue models is truly compelling. Now, one of the differences around this platform versus a network is we talked just briefly around the investments that need to be made. And that's the way of thinking about it from a network perspective. But from a platform perspective, you've got to think about how do I take advantage of these subscriptions against my subscribers, and how do I enable them quickly? There's two rules that you've got to think about going forward as the model for the future. The first rule is you've got to be first to service. You've got to be the first network, the first enabler of a new service as it becomes hot, to take advantage of that wave of growth. When waves of growth are measured in months, weeks, in terms of new business models or new services that come up, and you want to be the first to take advantage of it, you don't have the luxury of having a 6-quarter planning infrastructure build-out cycle. A physical-based network is not what's going to take advantage of these services. A logic-based network, logical resources that are dynamically managed through software, is what is going to define the winners versus the losers. So first to service, and being able to take advantage of that service capability. The second thing that's going to define the platform is fast to fail. And you say, well, what do you mean? In terms of talking about new business models, you're talking about failure. Well, I'm talking about fast to fail in a way that makes perfect economic sense to a well-managed operator. And that's from a perspective of when I see an investment is no longer paying off, when I see the profitability of a particular resource in my network and how it's being utilized is going down, that I can quickly transfer that resources and that capability in a new direction to take advantage of new services. And having a network that's based largely on hardware testing, hardware implementation, that requires months, if not years, to test it before I can push it out on the network, is not what's going to be able to take advantage of these new waves of models. I need a network that's virtualized. I need a network that actually takes the physical resources and moves them up a level into a logical management system. Some people might call this software-defined networking. What we call it at Juniper is just the next evolution of the business model and the next evolution of where the technology is taking us now that we've built IP-based networks. The fundamental enablers are now coming to the marketplace that allows for that next generation of service disaggregation, and that next generation of control disaggregation that is going to allow for these dynamic environments, much like the wave of virtualization hit the data center starting 10 years ago. That wave is coming to the network of tomorrow for us all in this room. This will be the basis of the conversations that we have for the next 10 years of how we build platforms. So first to service, fast to fail. But the other thing around building a platform versus building a network is managing the complexity that will come with this. So there is effectively 100 million subscribers between AT&T and Verizon each in the US today. A little more, a little north of that. But let's say that that's roughly in the ballpark of what you have in terms of subscriber management today. But beyond just the bandwidth growth that is going to come from the applications and services, it's how do you tailor these individual services, these new applications, to each and every individual subscriber. One size is not going to fit all. Every subscriber profile is going to be very different. They're going to have a number of subscriptions associated with this. And this is not a billing statement problem. This is a logic-based problem, which is how do you align different resources and chain different services and applications together for that individual subscriber as they are using that service across the network, and then tear it down and reapply those resources to the next subscriber in real time. How does a network become that dynamic? And that is what changes the thinking from, is the network ready, to, do you have a platform to make it happen? And if you think I'm talking about things that are going to be 10 years out, 12 years out, well, maybe. But I think the reality is that it's going to come much faster, just like everything else in this industry has over the last 20 years, than any of us expected to, because the demand is there. Here's some interesting factoids that my team has put together in terms of making that point. You know, you look at these numbers up here, and you look at what the consumption can be against this type of activity. And you look at smart meters, and everyone's saying, you know, smart meters are interesting, and yes, that will drive a lot of connection points into the mobile network. Is the only efficient way to do this is putting some kind of LTE device on that smart meter and talking back to the energy space. But the reality is just like everything else, once you get that small bit stream and that connection into the home, there will be smart people, entrepreneurs, people within the companies themselves, the service providers, that will figure out how to take advantage of that connection point in new and different ways. They will consume that connection point in new and different ways, expanding the pipe and expanding the connection back into that endpoint. It will happen. It's happened in every other instance of the endpoint connecting to our network over the last 20 years. It started small. It all started with 64K modems. It all started from that standpoint. And being able to take that opportunity and expand it out in new and different ways will be the paradigm for service operators to take advantage of. Those that can respond to it and offer their networks new and unique ways. When you think about not just the amount of traffic that the machine-to-machine evolution will drive against the network, think about the quality of service that will come from machine-to-machine. And when I talk to our customers, when I talk to others in the industry, is a lot of times they think about machine-to-machine purely in simplistic terms, and maybe that's an overemphasis, but talk about it in terms of, you know, it's a machine, it's not a user. It doesn't require user experience. It doesn't require a great GUI. It requires a quick provisioning system, an automated provisioning system, but it doesn't really require quality of service or experience of service. Well, let's disrupt that thinking right now. Is a car in the future running against the network? That's a machine-to-machine device. The massive amounts of data that are coming from that car into the network and coming back from the network, talking about telemetry, real-time spacing within the traffic pattern of the network. What's going to happen when that car is running at 60 miles an hour into an S-curve in a high traffic pattern at the same time that a CEO across the same network wants to make a high-definition video call that has a prioritized service level agreement at the same time that a doctor from the Mayo Clinic is trying to do a delicate heart surgery over a video conference with somebody at the other end? Is understanding how to manage all those things with the quality of service, with the massive amount of data flow that's coming across a network, a cell tower, a mobile core at the edge that's trying to process all those different requirements in real time and understand those different things. You can't have packet collisions. You can't have network drops. You can't have latency in the network. All of those are mission critical, life critical elements that the network and the services that the next generation of providers will provide. But what's compelling about that is it's valuable. It's incredibly valuable. Service providers, healthcare providers, automobile manufacturers, consumers themselves will be willing to pay for that kind of intelligence, that kind of capability. And those that can provide it in a compelling and a high service quality way in a rapid transformational way will not only be able to take advantage of it, but we'll be able to be able to consume the profitability and the profit pools that come from that. This really is what defines the next generation of business models. It's not just around traffic optimization. It's not around securing the network. It's not around just managing the exponential explosion of traffic that's going to happen with video and all these new connected endpoints. It's around providing a fast, flexible network that's first to service and fast to fail, and has the ability to intelligently program and design itself around the demands of the services and the applications that are coming. The network in and of itself, when you're building a platform for the future, not a network for the future, the difference for that platform is that it can take all these considerations and provide that intelligence. Ecosystems will be built around that platform. 4G operators will become the owners of that platform and will become the managers of the ecosystem. That's what will create the winners in this industry as we look forward. So I'll leave you with 3 questions. The first is, ask yourself on the I side of that ROI equation is your network secure? Have you thought about a comprehensive security plan? All of these things, all of these wonderful visions of the future and how to create a platform in the network don't happen unless people trust your network. I was at Microsoft, as Burj pointed out, when Code Red and NIMDA hit Microsoft. I, like many employees, took my volunteer chair at the call service desk when those conversations were coming in from customers that were literally in the state of absolute panic because they had lost their key information, pictures of their kids, other types of information that they all of a sudden realized they were never going to get back again. Microsoft lost a tremendous amount of trust with its customer base over that experience. What can happen to a network operator? Can you imagine a network operator, a 4G operator, going out for a month? That's how long Sony was out of action with its PlayStation Network when it went down. That's impossible to think about. But with this new generation of technology and with all of its opportunities it brings, is having security across the network and a comprehensive portfolio of security that's definitive in terms of understanding where the attacks are coming from and scales to the performance of the need of the operator and the traffic that is driving are absolutely imperative to make all these opportunities happen. The next question is, what is that network going to cost? Have you optimized that network? Have you taken into account how the behaviors of mobile video in particular and high quality of services are going to impact your network and how to manage those effectively? And the final question that you've got to ask yourself around the strategy is, are you building a network or are you building a platform? Somebody who's building a network for the future will plan capacity. They will plan for all this video traffic. They will plan for the impacts of new endpoint devices and how to provision machine-to-machine devices in a very scalable way. And they will build a highly scalable network. And they may even build a scalable network that is very cost efficient. But are you building a platform? Are you anticipating where the demand is going to come from and building a network that is first to service and fast to fail? Are you building something that is going to be managed in terms of logical resources that can quickly be re-provisioned across the network to take advantage of these services, targeting multiple subscriptions to individual subscribers? Or you just think about capacity planning? That's the difference between a platform and a network. And that's going to be the definition of what defines winners and losers. And so as we think about this thing, the inside, the question that I'll leave you, the 3 questions I'll leave you with for the rest of the day and the rest of the year are these 3, and a thought around where are you taking your business model next to take advantage of the new network. Thank you.
Do you mind taking a few questions?
No, that's
Okay.
certainly why I stand here.
And we have microphones as we did yesterday, so they're certainly available for any audience questions. But in the meantime, I'm going to start you with, you asked questions at the end of your talk.
Yes.
And that's a good way to deflect any questions to you. But I think you still are in a position where you can at least address some things that you brought up and may not have tied together as effectively. So first of all, what are the differences in what this network as a platform has to do when you're thinking about the whole breadth of end-to-end and Internet of Things relative to the mobile broadband network of people? Now, several of the examples you gave, there are people in the car, there are people attached to medical devices, so there are people associated with them. There are a lot of other things that have really no relation to people. You know, meters are close, right? I know there are meters attached to my house or office, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So how does that change this whole notion of the platform?
Yeah, so the platform really thinks about the experience in terms of not just the usability of that experience, which is very important to the people aspect of it.
Right, exactly.
But every one of these people is going to be consuming multiple subscriptions, multiple capabilities coming out of that network at one time. Right now, the inflection point around that usability of experience with an operator today is around that one-to-one relationship. I have my smartphone on, I'm looking at that screen. I take my smartphone, I put it down, I have my tablet on, I'm looking at that screen. And that's really a subscriber level conversation that's happening between the user and the network. As we think about this going forward is when you have a machine-to-machine world, the environment of which you live in, of which is impacting that user, has multiple different inputs going in the network that is actually affecting that user. Not just the direct experience. All of these things coming together and managing those subscriptions on a level and the level of consumption that that user is now going to drive expands significantly. And it's how do you bring that together in an integrated way for that user? How do you bring it together in a way that is a complete experience for that customer, even in ways that they're not using or directly engaging that experience? All this data is interacting with the network at multiple different levels. Many of it not directly perceived by the user in that experience at the moment, but coming into them about interaction with the network. That is what a platform is going to have to manage. Managing subscriptions, not just the subscribers. And the subscriptions is a word for the overall experience that customer has.
So really kind of to wrap that up, how confident are you that we can really overcome that security challenge you described? Because in fact, repeatedly, these hackers are capable of overcoming whatever security shield we put up. How confident are you?
So anybody that would get up on a stage and say that they're absolutely confident of a security paradigm that can protect you from hackers going forward would be somebody that would have to explain themselves over the course of at least the next year. That's how fast the evolution of attacks are happening. And the reality is that there is no perfect security system. But in terms of, is there a better way of actually implementing a security architecture across the network than how it is generally being done today? Absolutely. And that I can say with confidence, is there is a better way. There is a way of significantly reducing your exposure to your network and at the same time knowing that you're being more effective rather than guessing at how effective you are against security, which in many cases, that is the paradigm of today. You put up your best defense and you hope, versus putting up your best defense and actually understanding what's happening in the network.
Slide for the next panel. So the better way then, the hackers will figure out how to overcome that, right?
They will figure out a better way.
So is this kind of like a self-organizing network? It will understand that the hackers have overcome one solution and implement another?
Part of that, and that's a great question, Burge, is that you can create a security, there's one way to create a great security paradigm for a network, and that is disconnect the network. Not going to happen if you can't get access to it. The other way is to block everything. Put up a firewall and block everything. That's not going to work. So what you can do, though, and what is not being done today, is definitively identify behaviors, attacker behaviors, as they're happening. And as soon as you see that behavior on the network happening, identify where that behavior is coming from, specifically. Not a range of IP addresses, but a specific MAC address on a device. And as soon as you identify that device, warn every other endpoint across the network that that point in the network is doing bad behavior. And so you become very responsive, very dynamic in your security posture as you move forward. Having that kind of security intelligence, which doesn't exist today, but is being brought into the marketplace by Juniper, is something that will redefine what a security architecture is. Will it be perfect? No. Will it be significantly better and give a much better understanding of how hackers are attacking the network? Yes.
And then when you find that guy, send a drone in after him, right?
Yeah.
Cool. I like that.
All right.
Get out of the way there. Thank you so much, Brad.
Thank you, Persh. Thank you.
Great.